You earned a six-figure salary and, on paper, you finally made it. And yet you still freeze in the grocery aisle over two brands. You pick the cheaper one because the number in your account says you have to. You own a home, the responsible move everyone told you to make. And still the bills land every month like charges you never signed off on. So you ask the question millions of people are quietly asking right now. Where did I go wrong? Here is what almost nobody says out loud. You did not go wrong. You followed the instructions to the letter. You worked hard, you saved what you could, you played by every rule. The problem is not your discipline. The problem is the game itself. And here is a twist. The viral clips keep getting backwards. The system is not broken. A broken system fails everyone equally, and this one clearly does not. It runs beautifully. It just runs beautifully for someone else entirely. For the people at the very top, the machine works exactly as intended. Every rising cost is not a glitch. Every new fee is not an accident. It is the feature. That is why so many Americans are doing something their own parents never imagined. They are leaving, not on vacation, for good. Middle-class families, skilled professionals, people pulling real incomes, all walking away from the only home they have ever known. And this video is not really about them. It is about you, the one who stays. Because before you decide whether to run, you deserve the truth. What exactly are you running from? And does running even solve it? We are going to take this whole thing apart together. The escape. The math hiding underneath it. The trap folded inside the escape itself. And what the sharp money quietly does instead. Stay with me because the most important part comes last. It is the one thing that follows you no matter where you land. Let us begin. Something is off, and you can feel it in your chest. And the strange part is that so does almost everyone else. Nobody coordinated it. A man in Texas says his whole life now runs on autopilot. He watches himself go through the motions like a stranger. A woman in New York went to a concert. She stood in the packed crowd, and somehow she felt emptier than she does alone at home. A guy in California still earns well, still hits the gym, still shows up for dates, and he calls all of it a survival checklist. Not living, surviving, ticking boxes. One person feeling this way is just a bad week. Millions feeling it at the same time is a signal about the whole environment. And the eerie thing is that none of them ever met. It stops being personal. It becomes the water everyone is quietly swimming in. After 2020, America changed in a way the numbers never fully captured. Not just the economy. The texture of being alive. People still clock in every morning. Still order the same coffee. Still post the same sunny photos online. But underneath that filter, something has worn dangerously thin. Notice how rarely strangers talk to each other now. Notice how the mall feels like an empty film set after everyone left. Notice how dating reads more like a negotiation than a spark. Even the holidays feel staged, like everyone is performing joy instead of feeling it. And here is the deepest shift of all. America used to sell the whole world a bigger, brighter future. Now that promise has quietly shrunk to one small thing. Just reach the end of the month without the account hitting zero. That is a completely different kind of crisis. The old stress asked, how do I finally get ahead? The new stress asks something much colder. What is even the point? That is not laziness. It is not quite depression either. It is a low-spreading numbness across a whole population at once. Flood a brain with enough bad news, enough inflation, enough layoffs. And it flips straight into survival mode. And in survival mode, the color slowly drains out of everything. The concert stops landing. The movie stops rescuing you. The weekend becomes 2 days of repair before the grind resets again. Now let us talk about money, because this is where the feeling turns into cold arithmetic. Look at rent first. In a typical household, rent now eats between 40% and 60% of monthly income. Sit with that number for a second. before food, before gas, before a single dollar goes towards savings, more than half your income is already gone. That is not a budgeting problem you can fix with coupons, and the lender's response tells you everything you need to know. They stretch mortgages so long the math only closes somewhere past your own funeral. Read that again slowly. The product they sold you is a debt you are never expected to finish alive. That is not home ownership. That is a lease with your name carved into it forever. And here is exactly what the viral version conveniently skips. Buying the house does not spring the trap at all. It just changes which door quietly locks behind you. Ask any homeowner you know. The mortgage is only the opening move. Property tax climbs higher on its own private schedule. Insurance costs more every single year while covering less. Fees and assessments land whether you agreed to them or not. You can own the walls outright and still feel them closing in. Then layer on everything else pressing down. Inflation quietly shrinks every dollar sitting in your pocket. Tuition has drifted so far from reality it looks like a typo. Childcare for one kid can cost as much as a new car every year. Stack all of that together and watch what happens. Two adults work full-time, both bring home real paychecks, and the account still runs dry before the month is even over. And here's the cruelest trick buried in the whole design. The raise. You finally get one after working years for it. And within a few short months, it has already vanished. Absorbed. Invisible. Rent nudges up. Groceries drift higher. Insurance renews at a worse number than before. Every extra dollar you earn arrives with a matching bill you never scheduled. It feels deeply personal, like you're just bad with money. You are not. This is the machine doing exactly what it was tuned to do. It watches your income rise, and it rises to meet it. The gain reaches you for a single moment, then it gets pulled right back up the pipe. That is why a raise never quite feels like a raise. That is why running faster on this treadmill never actually moves you forward. The belt simply speeds up to match your legs. And once you truly see that pattern, a lot of the shame lifts off. You are not losing this race because you are somehow slow. You are losing because the finish line keeps sliding away on a rigged track. So here's the honest question we're sitting with. Are you working to build an actual life? Or working to feed a machine that was built to stay hungry? Strip away the shame and just watch the money flows. The money is not vanishing into thin air at all. It is moving, open out, into the same small set of hands, on schedule by design. If your bills feel unreasonable, you are not being dramatic. You are reading the machine correctly for the very first time. And this is the exact moment something quietly snaps inside people. Not with anger, with clarity. People do not leave because they suddenly hate America. That explanation is lazy, and it is simply wrong. Most of them leave for one hard reason. The promised life is no longer affordable. They were told the deal was beautifully simple. Work hard. Follow the rules. The door swings open. They held up their entire end of that bargain. The door stayed shut anyway. And at some point, you stop believing it was ever going to open. That is the real turning point in all of this. Not a policy. Not an election. A quiet, total loss of faith. You finally realize the rules were written by the winners, for the winners. And that single realization shifts something almost impossible to undo. You can lose a fair game and simply try again tomorrow. What you cannot do is keep playing a game you now know is rigged. The blindfold comes off. See the tilt in the table just once, and you cannot unsee it. And when enough people see it together, they abandon the old fixes entirely. Earn more. Move states. Cut back. Hustle harder. Those answers all quietly assume the game is fair and you are just playing it badly. But if the game itself is the problem, playing harder only feeds it faster. So people start hunting for a completely different move. Not a better strategy inside the system. An exit from it. Their own grandparents never would have seriously considered this. Pick up your entire life and rebuild it somewhere foreign and unfamiliar. Somewhere the machine's grip on you is noticeably weaker. It sounds extreme right up until you have felt that grip yourself. Then it starts to sound a lot like survival. But here is where I have to stop the fairy tale cold. The escape carries a heavy bill of its own, and almost nobody in these videos ever names it. If you could not afford to stay, the coldest question of all waits for you. Where exactly does the money to leave come from? So let us be brutally precise about who actually leaves. The story sells you a beautiful fantasy, and the fantasy quietly skips the receipts. Picture the two extremes side by side. At one end sits the person crushed hardest by the cost, living paycheck to paycheck with nothing left over. Sometimes sleeping in a vehicle just to shorten a brutal commute. Packing every lunch for the week on Monday because there is no room left for more. That person simply cannot pick up and cross a continent. Moving is not free. Flights cost money. Deposits cost money. Visas cost real money. And lately they cost paperwork. Plus proof of income you may not even have. Here is the cruel irony sitting at the center of it. The people who most need the exit have the least cash to buy their way through it. At the other end sits somebody in a very different position. Savings in the bank. Remote skills that travel. A passport that opens doors and a cushion to soften the landing. That person can absolutely leave and often does. So watch that beautiful footage a little more carefully next time. Someone sipping coffee in a sunlit square somewhere abroad. That is not proof that anyone at all can escape. It is proof that escape, like everything else here, has a price of admission. And that admission fee is the exact thing most people are desperately trying to flee. There is another quiet truth hiding in the language too. A poor person crosses a border and we quickly call them a migrant. A comfortable American does the very same thing and we call them an expat. Same act. Different label. It is worth noticing carefully who gets which word. None of this makes leaving some kind of scam. It makes leaving a serious financial decision, not a magic trick. And any honest take on it has to start with the number the brochure hides. What does the door out actually cost? And can the people who need it most even walk through it? Some who already tried will tell you they arrived a day too late. Visas quietly tightened. Locals grew tired of newcomers driving up their rents. The window that looked wide open was already halfway closed. So where do they actually go? The ones who can afford it. The map has become pretty familiar by now. Sunlit cafes tucked into the hills of Lisbon. Slow mornings on a quiet Mexican beach. Streets in Thailand alive with the roar of motorbikes. The soft, green edges of Costa Rica. But get the motive right, because the surface story misleads everyone. This is not some shallow hunt for a cheap paradise to indulge in. The people leaving are honestly not chasing luxury at all. They are chasing something far plainer and stranger and much harder to buy back home. Peace of mind. A real, unhurried community. A nervous system that is finally out of the red. Put two pictures side by side and the contrast becomes almost physical. On one side, a freeway in Los Angeles baking under a merciless sun. Brake lights stretching all the way to the horizon. An office quarter the exact color of old concrete. The flat white glare inside a warehouse-sized store. On the other side, a slower street somewhere far away. Older people sitting with tea in absolutely no hurry at all, talking to each other like time is not a scarce resource. Strangers who smile without first running a quiet threat assessment. Here is the deeply uncomfortable reversal underneath it. America brags about being the most productive nation on the planet. It wrings the most output from every single working hour. But the invoice for all that productivity is finally coming due. And that invoice is written in years shaved off your life. Hours stolen from your sleep. For a lot of these people, leaving was never about adventure. It was simply about being able to breathe again without a weight on the chest. And a strange paradox waits patiently on the other side. Once you drop the cost trap, you discover you needed far less than you thought. A dinner where nobody keeps glancing at a work notification. An entire evening that finally belongs only to you. That used to be the basic baseline of a normal life. Somewhere along the way, back home, it quietly became a luxury. So if you have ever pictured waking up somewhere that feels lighter, you're not being frivolous. You are simply noticing something important. The thing you keep missing was never supposed to be rare. But wanting it and affording it are two very different problems. And that exact gap is where a strange new tool changed absolutely everything. Stay on that invoice for one more moment. You feel it long before you can name it. For decades, high productivity was the great American brag. More output squeezed from every worker than almost anywhere on Earth. It sounded like raw strength. Like winning. But look closely at what it actually demands from the human inside the machine. It demands that you stay reachable at dinner, reachable on the weekend, reachable late at night when a message lands and your stomach drops before your eyes focus. Productivity measured that way is not just work getting done. It is a whole human life slowly converted into pure output. And the exchange rate on that trade is brutal. You hand over your evenings, your sleep, your attention, the quiet space where a person actually recovers. And in return, you get numbers glowing on a dashboard. Somebody above you is watching. Here is the thing nobody warns you about that trade. It compounds. Not the good kind that builds wealth quietly while you sleep. The bad kind. Stress that steadily accumulates. Rest that never quite fully arrives. A weekend that shrinks into 2 days of damage control before Monday resets the meter. Do that for enough years and you do not dramatically crash. You just wear down quietly, like a pot that was never rated for continuous load. And that is precisely what people are naming when they finally leave. Not laziness, not weakness, a flat refusal to keep paying an invoice that only ever climbs higher. The machine will take everything you are willing to hand it. Then it will calmly ask for a little bit more. The people walking away are not rejecting work at all. They are rejecting the exchange rate. And then a strange new tool appeared. It quietly cut the rope tying income to a zip code. For most of modern American life, one rule went completely unquestioned. To earn well, you simply had to live near where the work was, which almost always meant an expensive, crowded city, which meant you gritted your teeth and handed over a small fortune, just for an address close enough to the office. Then remote work suddenly arrived and that old iron rule cracked wide open. One perfectly ordinary morning, millions of people had the exact same thought. Wait a second. Why am I bleeding $4,000 a month in rent for a stressful, scraped-thin version of my life, when the actual job fits inside a laptop and a decent connection? That single realization exposed something genuinely ugly underneath. The whole expensive, big city grind was never really a necessity. It was manufactured. A structure carefully built to keep you close, keep you spending, keep you feeding the same machine. The moment the work moved into the digital space, a buried truth finally surfaced. A huge share of the suffering had been purely geographical all along. You were paying a steep premium for a location the job no longer even required. From there, a fringe strategy quickly went completely mainstream. People started calling it geoarbitrage. Earn your income in dollars. Spend it in a currency that costs a fraction as much somewhere else. Keep the strong income and dump the punishing expenses entirely. It birthed the whole escape economy of digital nomads. People crunching numbers for a firm back in New York, while the ocean sits calmly right outside the window. And it completely flipped the old retirement math on its head. The traditional script said grind until 65, then finally start to live. The new one says take pieces of that freedom right now, while you are still young enough to actually feel it. Move your costs instead of shoving your dreams to the far end of life. It honestly looks like a clever heist pulled off against the old system, and it genuinely works for the people already positioned to run it. But the story almost always stops right here, at the triumphant part, and that is exactly the wrong place to stop, because a strange thing happens to a lot of these escapees. They pull off the getaway perfectly. They land in the beautiful, cheaper place. The rent drops. The pressure drops. And then they discover something: no luggage. They never meant to pack. The weight came with them. Changing a spot on a map can free you from a rent payment. It does not automatically delete what the old system spent years installing in your head. New country. New view. Same ghost, standing right where it always stood. This next part catches people completely off guard, so sit in it honestly. You would think the loneliness gets left behind at the airport. The anxiety too. The compulsive, endless scrolling. But they do not stay behind at all. They board the plane. They settle into the new place faster than you do. And here is exactly why that happens. What was quietly driving people out was never only the money or the geography. Look underneath it. It was a much deeper sense that modern life had stopped meaning anything. And meaning is not a thing you can leave behind in a storage unit. It travels. So the person who moves for peace finds cheaper rent and better weather, and still sometimes wakes up in paradise feeling the exact same hollow as before. The internet is absolutely full of the same quiet confession now. I am not sad, exactly. I just do not feel pulled toward anything anymore. And the truly frightening part is the echo it creates. How many people read that single line and instantly think, that is me? There is a loneliness spreading through a population that has never been more connected. You can reach almost anyone in a single second. You can see face after face all day on a glowing screen, and still feel like no one is actually there with you. Moving abroad does absolutely nothing to fix that. It can even sharpen it painfully. Now the familiar faces are far away too, and the silence in the new apartment has a different accent, but the same crushing weight. This is the real trap, folded quietly inside the escape. People pour everything they have into changing the coordinates, fully convinced the coordinates were the whole problem. For some of them, the location really was part of it, and the move genuinely helps. But for many, the thing they were fleeing was never on the map at all. It was the slow erosion of anything that once felt real. And you simply cannot outrun that by boarding a flight. You can only outrun it by rebuilding the thing that eroded. And that work looks exactly the same in Lisbon as it does back home. So let us follow that thread because it leads somewhere genuinely important. After all the talk of rent and healthcare and remote work, people hit a harder idea. Maybe it was never really about the money at all, and that idea stings precisely because money would have been so much easier. If it were only money, the fixes would stay clean and simple. Earn more. Move. Cut costs. Work remotely. But then you notice something that quietly breaks the theory. The people who did every single one of those things. Genuinely good incomes. Comfortable, stable lives. People who made it by every visible measure that counts. And they describe the exact same emptiness as everyone else. Something in the wiring is off, and a raise simply does not reach it. Look honestly at the tools we grab for every single day. Dating quietly became a catalog you swipe through, judging people like products on a shelf. Social media turned every ordinary moment into a small performance for an audience. Work, for so many, stopped being the source of identity entirely. It became a source of invoices and stress, and not a whole lot else. Even friendship now needs booking 2 weeks out, like a dentist appointment. None of these things sound catastrophic on their own, but stack them across many years and they quietly build a very particular kind of person. Constantly stimulated, constantly distracted, and underneath all of it, deeply and quietly alone. Hold on to one line here, because it matters. A country can survive a long, hard stretch of economic pain. It cannot survive the creeping sense that none of it matters. A society pushes through real hardship as long as the struggle has a point. It cannot push through when millions wake up privately asking, "What is any of this for?" That is the genuinely scariest part of the whole exodus. It is not people relocating to Mexico or Portugal at all. It is people who no longer feel connected to their own lives, right where they stand. They do not just want a different country to live in. They want a completely different way to exist. So they quietly fantasize about the smallest, plainest things imaginable. A garden. A quiet morning. A real conversation that is not happening through a screen. A community that actually knows your name. Things once dismissed as boring have quietly become a genuine luxury. Because after enough years wired to an overstimulating machine, stillness stops feeling like laziness. It starts to feel like the one thing your brain has been starving for. So the real question underneath all of this is simple and heavy. Is this feeling just a passing mood? Or is it quietly going to get worse? And the answer that unsettles people most is a hard one. What is happening does not look anything like a sudden crash. It looks like slow exhaustion. A quiet society-wide fatigue that never once announces itself. And that is exactly what makes it so dangerous. There is no dramatic scene. No single day the whole world falls over. Just years quietly passing. People lose faith. They lose energy. They lose the belief that tomorrow beats today. History is remarkably clear on this pattern. Societies almost never collapse in a dramatic, movie-like fashion. They fade. Trust erodes quietly first. Optimism slowly drains away. People check out emotionally, one by one. And only then does the whole structure start to wobble. Look carefully around you right now. The small signals are all arriving together at once. Birth rates are quietly falling. A lot of young people no longer feel sure they can even afford a family. Anxiety about the machines is climbing fast. Millions of office workers privately wonder if their job survives the next 5 to 10 years. Even careers once considered bulletproof are now hearing the word automation. And that breeds a brand new kind of fear. Not the old fear of failing. The colder fear becoming completely unnecessary. Ask yourself how many people today truly believe the next generation has it easier. For most of this country's history, the American dream actually worked. People genuinely believed tomorrow would be better than today. Now, a lot of young people look ahead and see something expensive, unstable, uncertain, and people can carry an enormous amount of pressure for years. As long as they believe some payoff is waiting at the finish line. Take that one belief away and everything starts shifting fast on the inside. Not everyone wants to pack up and go. Plenty of them still love this country deeply. They still go to work, still raise their kids, still try to live a normal life. But underneath it all, a growing number quietly feel the same thing. The system is burning through people faster than it hands out any hope. And the truly worrying part is how the whole thing feeds itself. The more stress piles onto society, the deeper people retreat into their screens. The more they retreat, the less they trust each other. And the less community they have, the harder it gets to feel anything means something. A loop that quietly tightens on its own. But here is the reframe that changes the entire picture. A lot of people going through this quietly assume they are losing their minds. They are not. They are reacting completely normally to a situation that has turned deeply abnormal. Feeling exhausted by a machine built to exhaust you is not a defect in you. It is an accurate reading. And that is exactly why videos like this one spread so fast. For once, millions of people land on the same thought. Wait a second. Maybe it is not just me after all. So let me offer you the one mood that actually matters. The one buried underneath all that footage of beaches and cafes. The enemy here was never the map. It was the cost structure. And a cost structure is something you can attack from right where you are standing. Geoarbitrage is not really about flying to another continent at all. Strip it all the way down and it is one simple principle. Separate your income from your physical location entirely. Then park your costs somewhere they cannot devour you alive. That lever works across an ocean, yes. But it also works just as well across a single state line. It works in a cheaper town still within reach of the city bleeding you dry. The people who quietly moved somewhere cheaper inside their own country. Who built a real community instead of chasing a bigger paycheck. Who kept their rights and their roots and simply refused the premium. They ran the exact same play as the escapees abroad. They just did not need a passport to do it. Step 1. Separate what you earn from where you sit. Step 2. Anchor your fixed costs where the machine cannot inflate them. Step 3. Rebuild the cheap, real things a life is made of. The point was never running away from your country at all. The point is running from the part of the deal built to drain you. And you can honestly start doing that today, without a single new stamp in your passport. So let us bring this whole thing all the way home. The exodus everyone keeps talking about was never really a migration story. It is an awakening. When the rules of a system stop serving the people inside it, stepping back is not weakness. It is clarity. But here is what the viral version gets badly wrong at the very end. It hands you exactly 2 options and nothing else. Stay and suffer, or leave and be saved. That is a false choice and a cruel one. Leaving is real, and for some people it is genuinely the right call. But it comes with a bill the beautiful footage never once shows you. The move costs money the most trapped people simply do not have. The loneliness quietly climbs into your suitcase and rides along. And your new address does absolutely nothing to the cost structure inside your head. So the honest answer is not run, and it is not stay and take it either. The honest answer is something much simpler than both. Stop feeding the part of the machine that was built to feed on you. Separate what you earned from where you sit. Move your costs, whether that is across a border or just across a county. Rebuild the small, real things that actually make a life feel like a life. They cost far less than the expensive version you were sold. You are not the one who failed here. You did the work. You kept every promise. The system did exactly what it was designed to do, and it was never designed for you. But the moment you see that clearly, you finally get something back. The right to choose your own next move. None of this is personalized financial advice, to be clear. It is a map. You are the one who has to walk it. So here is the real question, and I want your honest answer below. Say you rebuilt your life around peace instead of pressure. What is the first cost you would cut? And where would you go, if anywhere at all? Would you cross an entire ocean, or would you just cross a county line? Tell me down in the comments, because every answer becomes part of this picture. For the next person quietly reading it and wondering the same thing. Maybe this gave you a way to see your situation that holds up. That is why this channel exists. We take the machinery apart, piece by piece, every single day, so you can finally read the fine print they are counting on you to skip. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and I will see you in the next one.